Hey, so I'm going live to post this because we have to throw away all these meaningless trifles uh, that we're all so caught up in. Uh, I don't care if you call yourself a leftist, centrist, a right winger, a neo-Nazi, a progressive. Uh, we all have to pay attention. There are some very uh, serious issues that affect us globally, and it doesn't matter where you live on the planet. We humans are have gotten to the point that we have gone over the brink of where we will be able to survive. So if you're living now and you are 50 years old and younger, and you have kids, well, actually, no, even older than 50 years old. If you're 60, 70 years old, you'll most likely live to experience the catastrophic collapse for life on this planet. And then we will have less than a decade, or maybe a little bit longer, before we start having the results of mass die-off of humans. And this is, I am not being hyperbolic. I'm not being bombastic. Here, here the here are the things done by responsible people who have done studies, who have uh, who have talked with others, who have done other studies in other fields and also fields that they work on, and so on and so forth. These are people that have been paying attention to these issues for decades upon decades. Okay, so no, look, I want you to understand what this means. We have 60%, and that's a generous assessment, that 60% of sea life is gone down the drain, extinct. We have even higher percentage numbers, and those are generous, stating that the oceanic, between the warming up of the oceans and seas and the destruction of coral reefs, as well as the die-off of sea life, including plankton, a massive decrease in plankton, which is the small microscopic uh, creatures that live in the ocean that are the base for much of sea life. You have a rapid rise in red tide going everywhere. You have the Fukushima, um, and never mind the thousands of thermonuclear tests that have been done over decades, and that still is in the oceanic waters. Now you have Fukushima, and them dumping the what they're dumping the nuclear waste into the oceans, and the currents are carrying it all across the globe, and it's in the air. It gets in the air, it gets in the water, it gets in the soil, it gets everywhere. You Because of factory farming, we have an overabundance of nutrients, which causes red tide, which also kills off mass amounts of sea life. So fishing and never mind swimming in the oceans is let's just say you don't want to go swimming. We also have a massive elevated levels of toxic pollution in the air, which are causing all sorts of issues, from breathing issues to causing cancers and other birth defects, including autism, and that's even exacerbated by the toxins in the food like glyphosate and other byproducts of insecticides that are in your foods that you buy at your supermarkets, no matter where you go. That even the food that you grow in your own property has it because your property is inundated. Doesn't matter where you live. You add up that and the newest report, which is actually the lower side. Again, it's 60% of all animal life has gone extinct. That includes birds, rodents, and other mammals. You also have invertebrates, which are bugs, such as honeybees and wasps, who do a lot of pollination, which allows us to grow our food and to have natural food. And between the toxification of the soil and the air and the wholesale destruction of ecosystems for the invertebrates and the animals and the birds, that is bad. I mean, the invertebrates, the lower estimate is 70%, and there are others that are saying it's much higher than 70%. So you have all that going on. You have the pollution from factory farming. You have the pollution from using fossil fuels. You have the dumping of all sorts of man-made chemicals. The uses of insecticide with the carcinogens, which greatly increases 50% or more, increases the chances of coming down with some form of very aggressive cancer or birth defects or bronchitis, Crohn's disease, you name it. You have all that going on. And all those toxins are being littered all over the country and all over the world. You have nuclear waste stockpiles that are leaking everywhere. You have these super sites where they're dumping nuclear waste. As a matter of fact, in Massachusetts, in a wealthy suburban area that includes three or four fairly affluent towns in Massachusetts, on wetlands, they have two super sites which have been dumping nuclear waste and other toxins. And that's gotten into the groundwater. It's gotten into the actual reservoirs. And Flint isn't the only place that has high levels of lead and arsenic and all sorts of other stuff. In the case of Flint, it helped to bring about Legionnaire's disease. But here's the thing: with the increasing of levels acceptable by EPA and state and other sort of and not just this is not just in the U.S. but everywhere else. You have high levels of lead, unacceptable high levels, even though your state and federal environmental protection EPA standards are actually significantly higher than what they should be. You know, we got copper that's in the water, and copper's good, but even with copper, if you have too much of it, it actually becomes toxic. So and there's arsenic, there's lead, and even the stuff from asbestos in your waters, in our drinking water. This is not just for, and even if you have well water, guess what? You're getting the bleed off because everywhere is contaminated. You're getting the bleed off in your wells. But the quote unquote public drinking water is inundated, absolutely inundated. So you have all this going on. You have climate change, which is running out of control, and the media, when they do talk about it, they have to use studies that have been made more palatable by the scientists because they don't want to be called hyperbolic or bombastic. Because they're worried that people won't pay attention. But people aren't paying attention now. This is not red alert, it's black alert. It's imminent. It's imminent. It is not, something that's going to be off decades and decades later. We're not gonna need 2030 or 2040 or 2050. We're gonna see it. We're gonna see it within span of what you see, what you can count here, or just slightly more. And you add up all of this. How much importance can you place on meaningless trivialities of what somebody else looks like, what color they are, what shape their eyes are, what quote unquote religion they follow? If we don't stop the wars, because wars only perpetuate and exacerbate dramatically an already failing global system. We have to understand the planet is our home. The houses and the apartments that we live in, those are just residences. The only home that we have is the planet. And we have literally killed it. And we are continuing to kill it. I've seen personally insects dying by the hordes just on my property alone. I got trees that are literally falling apart everywhere. Healthy trees, and they got massive amounts of moss growing on them within a short span of years. Short span of few years, massive amounts of moss going on. And that's always an indication. But I've been, when I'm traveling up to go see my family, I see moss and other fungus growing in entire swaths of forests as I'm driving. And they are clearly unhealthy. You can see it. Never mind the I don't see squirrels as much as I used to. I don't see chipmunks as much as I used to. I don't see birds as much as I used to. Insects, I don't see insects as much as the only insects I've actually seen a lot of are mosquitoes and ticks and fleas. That's it. Look around you where you live and look at that. Test your water, test your ground. Then tell me, how can you pay attention to all this rubbish? And the media, the big media, are the enemy of the people. There's not a lot of things that I agree with Trump with. I think Trump is a mafia goon, and he's a criminal out and out. His whole family was a criminal out and out. His father was a criminal. His grandfather was a criminal. Hillary Clinton, she's a criminal. Barack Obama, he's a criminal. Joe Biden, he's a criminal. Joe Manchin, he's a criminal. The Koch brothers, Soros, they're all criminals. Understand something. Stop fighting meaningless things and start paying attention to what actually matters. And what actually matters is that your life, our life, is literally on the chopping block. And it is because we aren't doing what we must. What the hell does it matter if the migrants get into this country? We're still going to all die. We're still going to face the. You know who will be the lucky ones? Are the migrants that are killed by those of you who have the ideology, who have the thinking that these people who are coming out here trying to get away from horrible conditions. If you go out there and kill them, they'll be the fortunate ones. The ones that died already, they'll be the fortunate ones. Look, I care for us all, and I don't care where we live in the world. I care for us all. I want to see us all evolve and actually become the humans, though that wonderful potential that we all have as humans. I want to see that for us all. But we're not going to get there, and we're all going to suffer. Let me take, all for one and one for all. Well, guess what? We don't have that. And until we have that mentality and throw away the notions of countries and nations, and we stand as all for one and one for all, we're going to all for one and one for all die. And it's not going to be pretty pretty deaths, we're all going to suffer greatly. Taking your kids to go to karate practice, going to your jobs, paying for your bills, all of that is meaningless. Prepping for doomsday, meaningless. Because it is going to get us because we're allowing it. And the it is a collapsing of the very ecosystem that we utterly depend on. Are we going to go struggle amongst ourselves, killing each other off? Or are we going to put the screws to it and start actually solving issues? And there are ways to solve it. Well, not solve it, but at least try to slow it and give us time to fix it. But we're not going to have that if we're going to be contentious with each other. If we're going to have ideas that pit us against each other. When the real criminals are out there pushing for our own annihilation. And these idiots, these criminals believe that they can somehow survive. Or they'll build space stations so they can get away. They'll build bunkers to get away. That's a pipe dream. Any responsible person who's actually studied and looked into it will tell you it won't work. You've seen all the movies. There's a reason why there's a theme that even when you do make these bunkers and these space stations, that they always collapse. Always. There's a reason for that. It's not just the writer's imagination. They're actually getting feedback from people who study this sort of stuff, who have shown through mathematics and through other observations and tracking data that that's exactly what will happen. There is no good doomsday scenario. There is no good doomsday scenario where if you have money and power and you build a space station for the elites, that is going to survive. There is no such thing. Please, I ask, please, I plead, please get off it. Get together and be the community I know we can be. Because with our ingenuity, with our will, we can slow it and we can give ourselves time. But that takes a willingness to let go of the meaningless. Because the meaningless is going to get us. We will be bringing in our own destruction. Don't depend on others, the media and these faux institutions that promote for those people who fund these institutions or these groups. look into peer-reviewed studies. And for all the things that are wrong and criminal about governments, they actually do keep track of accurate data. So look into those. Not what the politicians are saying, but what the bean counters and what the people who are not the heads of the EPA or or the all those other alphabet soup places. Look into what independent college studies show. Look into the independent groups that are actually have looked into it. I plead, please, let us come together and be all for one and one for all, because that's the only way it's going to stop. And the first step to doing that is we should all stop doing anything. Don't pay your taxes. Don't pay for food. Don't pay for your cable. Don't pay for your phone bills. Don't pay for anything. Don't drive your vehicles. Don't do anything. Get together with the community. Learn how to grow simple things. And as a community, work towards it. As a community, find out how to forage for stuff that you can eat. As a community, hunt just the necessary amount. We can't destroy more of our animal population than necessary. Got to use as much of it as possible. Do this to send a message. Otherwise, all we're going to be doing is killing each other. And the criminals will be sitting there poo-pooing us. The criminals are the politicians. Criminals are the media and the corporations and the wealthy that own the media. The criminals are the FBI, the police, the establishment. The criminals are the judges, the lawyers. The criminals are the faux intellectuals from colleges with degrees. The criminals are the bankers. Criminals are the corporations that are produce the stuff that we consume. That in turn actually poisons us. I beg you to, uh, I beg you to listen. I beg you to want to see your children, your mothers, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers, your aunts, your uncles, your neighbors, your friends, to see the next generation and the generation after that. Please.